GHAELGAGH, GHAELGAGH as GHAELGAGH.
As my saw kiaull delia tashin gol toyach der Claare na Gael, as bevaliam Chooish aldige. My name is Robert Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Have I heard tell of old Bobby Bob?
And this bilingual programme is called Claare na Gael, with a thread in the English language, a snai elia G Gaeilg, and another thread of it in the Manx Gaelic, Chinyanamera, the mother tongue of Ellen Vanning, the Isle of Man. As Bannacht and reesht. Well, last time we heard the foreword by Craine and Marcus of Braide that was added to the republication in 1940 of a booklet by Mr. J B Keig of Ramsey, of which we also heard his original preface from 1933. We move on now to the text of that booklet. Ten alle van Helsing voorraad seilje gemaakt der Mina as Jonathan Harker, den Charn Godalming Arthur Holmwood, de Quincey Morris as den early John Seward, nuvis na purigen moere Jane Count Dracula. Ach, ta caglian ersen, yes. As to purigen oxen, son Shenazulju. We'll start with the oldest extant recording of a song in Manx, and it's John Nelson, a publican in Ramsey, though himself staunch teetotal, who translated and sang this in 1907. Tashu geistach rish radio vanning, stasiwn na nasiwn, visguller scaliamach by Dulish, Ellen Vanning.
Hymn 348, thanking the new name. Craine might Gael na iron ben, then kiaull Craine again. Ennym no, let I just on again. Ennym no, let I just on again. Mijn Ennym no, the kiaull by again. On the kiaull by Craine again. Craine might Gael na iron ben, then kiaull Craine again. Mijn Ennym no, echt on clock ben, a lot and blij creator screws on again. They can from jou besterken, ready, klok jou ben, let zijn gezanken, klok jou ben, let zijn gezanken. Mijn Ennym no, echt gezanken.
recorded on the Edison phonograph purchased by Sophia Morrison for the Manx Gaelic Society. That was purchased in 1905. It was put to use by John Nelson in Ramsey in 1907 as he recorded his translation of Sankey Hymn 348, A New Name, Ennym No, or as he rather put it, Ennym No, which I don't admire, but anyway, they're grateful thanks to Éire Chooish Fanning, Manx National Heritage, for making that very important artefact available these days. Now, this booklet, of which we heard the foreword on republication and the original preface, is called Some Nicknames, with phonetic spellings, as used in the parish of Ballaugh from about 1860 to 1900, compiled by J B Keig, Ramsey, January 1933. Well, in the foreword and the preface we heard something about the classes into which the nicknames have been divided, but I mentioned about moving on to the text itself. However, in truth, there's not a body of text, there's a bit of a matrix or framework which gives information about a number of individuals in Ballaugh, and it mentions their name and address and occupation. So it's an interesting social history of the parish in itself. But we'll look at that and see how we go with it. As we heard from Chalsmoor, Jew and Robin, Chalsa Craine and Marcus of Braide, as well as from Mr. Keig himself, the nicknames are divided into classes, but there's inevitably some overlap depending on how you look at them and break them down. De Keeir, tan olu van Helsing ginstau, goudest en apurigen ingen raschen, gen el strien oru, as tashin ser de yinne wimmed Tashin courage the moor jay jouwen gus Cooish, as gus Jerrey de Chulina na vel Sondag, moor end an a ridden shaw. Nish liegt un fagen goudest en apurigen kajin chit nai ein kagliet, as een acht genodde ver shaw ginu ridden. Als vogelen Jerrey liegt un sorsmunjen na kaglien jane toeder folles en acht kajin, as jane ver shaw lie. Olju tain de sturishin she na tradisjonen as fes creduan ton. Genel utsen ege toiach gin de vei monne, tret en Chooish benten der bios as bes. Gene jane smoon na eder bios na bes. Gene jane smoon na eder bios na bes. Ni ai sein dun vei boeiach, hoiach der node wel femein sen, Gerel 6 elefoon in Gael, a sana in it der affair, logulju, de vel na ridden shaw, tradition as fes credu, a cledden Cooish. Now, John Nelson, that we've just heard, was born about 1840, and he made that recording we heard in 1907, so he'd have been getting on for 70 at that time. Well, these are now altogether younger voices.
Nach Hadl Mishra,
pupils of the BUNSCOILL GHAELGAGH singing the traditional song about the little russet-coloured bird Ushag Vegroi. Noel credju ons soeder en volle ljai son slaelje. Ach, a trai genelle en son, orus en shen. Blain de henne, kwijgen weg saige jay de begelied possible. Se vein jay naio chidu jeg ein sheensach, aurasach, courage de nigen. Renshin eer fage jay credju was renshin fagen prowers jay rosnen sulien heen. Jin saige jayesh, de vel en soeder falle, ze credju ons na kaglien as an egg, kaglien egge as corishe. Ljaie ege tre toon an undin chedden. Son, lig thou instu, de vel en ersen de chulje wold we deinje on de riu. Se tjan greg, se tjan rauw, te ledden de vriesiger mijn ons dagheurt. Se rank, se rinja, eer ons en tjernocesi, as se tjien. Gauw ze shen wijn ons de chulje acht, eer ons shen te redden. As ten tier goil aros de lingshaw. Te naart a versuke Islanach, a hun vis sloche jowl, a Slav, a Saxon, a Magyar. The section of the booklet, some nicknames as used in Ballaugh from about 1860 to 1900, the first and longest class of nicknames derived as patronymics, and that's to say that they take a name associated in some way with the father. Now, of course, I go by Bobby Bob because I'm a Robert who is the son of a Robert. So in Scandinavian areas, I'd be Robert Robertson. Or in other Gaelic areas, perhaps Mac Robert or Mac Roby or some such. Well, my father's father, my grandfather, was John, although, to be honest, he actually normally went by Jack. But anyway, I'll come back to that. So probably if I was using the three bits, my father and my grandfather, I'd probably be Bobby Bob Jack. But somehow, in a stronger sense, his father again was William. I don't know that he generally went by Billy. I suspect he remained a William. But all the same, I've been saying Bobby Bob, John, Billy, because after Bobby Bob, it seemed to be easy to go into John. And then, of course, we had Billy after that. Anyway, talking to somebody about these sort of strings of patronymics, she had a family name that was something like Jackie Joe and it turned out that the was a shortened version of his grandfather's name, Willem, or William. and that's Becky Hurst and her band, the Red Galley BIRLINN JIARG.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Stasiwn yn asiwn, sien radio bannings yn sio tasiw geisiach rys Claare na Gael. Mer yn pyn Robert Cwtyn Carswell, Robert y Carslach.
Have you ever had tell of old Bobby Bob?
Te Claare na Gael maas de chieden door en de Claare radio banning rys verklaasjen rys schachten. Lug je dau guller skelia machen chid chiet sio. Joris broe kraman eragert in de radio banning as rai Ennym a Claare sien. Te Claare na Gael jint mo podcast nis, vis vergeten nasty in de radio vanning, na truden reich de podcast jou, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, na Alexa. Now, we'll most certainly come back to those sort of patronymics that I was talking about, but the first person in this list is Miss Margaret Cowley, noted as living in the village where she's a housekeeper. Her nickname is given as Mag Colloy. Now, Mag is a fairly obvious shortening of Margaret, but we know that the name, which has now for many years been pronounced as Cowley, was at an earlier time, and, well, obviously elsewhere from here in Ballaugh, it was pronounced as Cowler. But here she's Mag Colloy. As she was an unmarried woman, she still got the family name, so in that sense it's not a nickname as such, it's just a perhaps unusual variant of the name Cowley. The next entry is about Mr. James Corlett, or probably from the days this list was compiled, Mr. James Curlett or Mr. James Curlyard, but we don't know, won't get down to that sort of detail in this list. He was the owner crofter of Ballamore in Ballaugh, and he was distinguished from the many other Corletts and the many other James Corletts in the parish by being known as Jem Beg Tom Jem. Chooish as Chooish, ta ulju ein fodmuch gynnu Benton day, as ligt thou ginst you de vel ors on moor range in a credu and on, nutashin wagen sa chiel chionitjain, chun jou banra. Tan soeder volle fos bio, as chan nodde getten bes inrigen through den tregel sha. For the bishiche trevis caid de chit de wei rauwer lesh fool na bioi. Hier na smoene shen, tashin wagen na maastein de wat eer chit de wei na se. De vel na ebled in some blauwe segge, chit de wei ledden de vree, as they jean de vel het unjaartige ad heen, tret en pabulum merlier eg ons palchit. Ach nod bishiche ginne wie sjo. Genelle gie gorish firelia, eern in gara Jonathan, ren bege merish frischachtien, gerenni riu vagen Gael be, riu. Genelle kiau skerdu, genelle ginu sken sa gles hurastel, rish moren Jonathan vagen. Ten jaartje immerdie salauege, rare fein is Jonathan rish, tre renne duna doris nine the more the older, as tre renne kuna lesh noos, vine diligence, yes. And the voices of Cayley and Grania, young as they were when this was recorded, are joined by Hilary and then Greg in this recording by Stair of Ilienbach.
As a tree hang Ilienbach, Sudi Oren Harish's law, Grede Deren Lesh Mahui, as a shen de Fusemi. Vaki Kavo Banya Ben, Vakehinuk Magi Don, Hayad Rumbulation Awen Derurosh, Fabrisher and Lair. Draps you know, Snish Kiri Mavin, Vai the Cavel Banya Ben, Tashe in Yin and Bite and Shaw, as be you heen and Chak do Jow. Curse G the Capos the Clone, Curse Shini Sarah Clare, Isha Cob. Gallows calling on Stalau, Gennehonen and Fagestelur, Nog nach Kaza Admalt, Neskrepen a Kraken Banya Ben. Gael Corin Fernalau, Jerrey and Fagestelur, Chinder the Huro Million Bocht, Ascabi Ilium Bochtus a Grund. Jackson Owen High Ilium, Lion Shen for Dunverdazu, Shayin and by John Shaw, Aachen Jack to Reno survive.
The biter bit, really, as Ilium, the serial killer, suffered the fate he intended for another victim. The family band Stair sang that for us, Ilium Bach. For the Claare heen, the vei morda alder. Gouds tashin tiggle vain verder Roshen Whitby, trerene rape a foslet a morda. For the vei Kratniag, moren and ven Mina fagene nunja guns Whitby. As Ren and Gara John fagen treve getlach mach vain tai shaw go fages dun. As Ren and Gara Quincey fagen unyag and inner Lucy. For the chit ons froch vis cruitjegge, ren Captain Wujle vede prawel shenje. Ach, vai net a fissain ta kagliach an audit for the crew froch shen. As genodde weach begift de machine. Renne chit ons gaulen rei hollis maar John Bunnedach, Rish maar ren Jonathan fagen de shurig en shen ons a gastje like Dracula. Te chit de wei beg, renshin heen fagen en inna Lucy, rosh marawi ag she, skirra trut skalt je lied reneg, eg doris a tai meriw. In Mr. James Corlett's nickname, Jem Beg Tom Jem, the first bit, Jem Beg, would make him Little Jem, but that's not to say that he was a small man. It probably means only that he was Jem, the son of Jem, so Jem Junior rather than Small Jem. Whilst his grandfather was Tom and his grandfather was another Jem, Jem Beg Tom Jem. A woman taking a patronymic-based name is given next, and she's Jane Juan Fall. Jane, the daughter of Juan, whose father was Paul. She was Miss Jane Neen, and she was a farm servant at Ballamona. At Crocha Gurran, the owner-farmer, Mr. William Corlett, was known as Willie Tom Steen, and we heard in the opening remarks that last bit is a Manx version of the name Stephen, so William, son of Thomas and grandson of Stephen. The port is a beautiful hidden valley in Ballaugh, and living there as owner crofter and also working as a dyker, so building dry stone walls, was Mr. William Boyd, and he was Bill the Woodach. The Reverend Samuel Rutter went on, albeit briefly, to be bishop and is buried in Peel Castle in St. German's Cathedral. In Castle Rushen, though, he penned songs about drinking and forgetting the world's cares, but he probably didn't envisage a version quite like this.
Sail Chindam again.
seilchin them again.
MUCCYN CAGGEE, The Pigs of War, and a version of Samuel Rutter's song Let the World Go Round, Ligden Seilchin der Magit. In the case of Billerwuddoch, probably not quite a nickname, it just happens to be the form used for what was rendered by English clerics as Boyd, and he was known as Billerwuddoch. Among the Manx speakers recorded was Harry Boyd from elsewhere in Ballaugh, and he gave his name as Harry Bodach, so very close to Wuddoch. For the next entry, though, I think there could have been more of an explanation. It refers to John Craine, who was a crofter and farm servant of Ballaugh, so crofting for himself at Ballaugh and going to work as farm servant elsewhere to supplement his income. He was known as Kidden Lenny. Now, Kidden is evidently the pronunciation of the name generally given these days as Cain, but I don't know whether that means his father was called Lenny or whether John Kidden was associated with the Len, perhaps. We're back on firmer ground with Dan Johnny Phillip, Mr. Daniel Corlett, the tenant farmer of Ballamore. Fuddier, choleers teing edden de redegge, chit maag vai veggerby as golsjach on ons veggerby. Gin scans den acht gechon as te connelt na eer leie tregelia lesh ail, te tashugrerish. Fuddier fagen se dorges. De wel sjo veggerpoer en sail vis lie rund magas en salje. Ach, jin Chooish ach romulju tammy de grey. For the edge no ullion red and shaw, ach, chanel e ser. Chane, te eer na smoene versoenach dan sleep ons berling, dan dunje benrich se GHAELGAGH. Chanodde gol bol be baljes. Chanel e je nejur, sign de ve bialach de chartans de lion na nejur. Craine fair gesign. Chanodde golstjach on bol be hoyacht, manabel pech enjach jane luchtai, cor quirra ersen de hit. Ach, na lug for die chit morsaljish. Tan poor egg a square, me shen egg de chuljuridulk, egg an chitlai. Chaneach eg chartans de chrein wat sersens kaglit vega. Young musicians of BUNSCOILL of Doon playing May Ellis's tune Green Hills of Doon.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Sianne stasiwn na nasiwn to radio fanim, ag y tre ton si Claare na Gael wisgol yr sgelia mach, mish Robert Cytyn Corswell, Robert de Corslach.
Have you ever had tell of old Bobby Bob?
Mana velis of all take a rail go, chanoddeach cochlea heen ag mun lai, na cat ag iri na grania na lai grania. Tan a ryddin sio yn inch dun. As the recorder sio ein ta prowlus ein vai tiggle na fawen. Ma so, chawds foddy a gynnu mor bailis chawstaij in GHAELGAGH ege, Tretjas in fedden na tai oer ege, tai coffin ege, tai nuren ege, a ball niauw chasrik, maar rensjen fagen tre hai agus ai en dunjer en marrow heen ons Whitby. Na jai eg tre eliach en noddeach cochlei, tre ten treer jet. Te sly greinius na vodigol sjaustje rai eg liggin eg roer te taide. Esh, ta ridden vis Juno ersen huish na wel poerege, gurish a galie des visain uri, as gurish ridden kajerik, gurish a gaure shaw a crucifix em, van a mastein eer nishtrevaschen reiger ridden, dausen shen genel e beg, ach tret tad fair, te goil inid forde vou, as tostach lesh aram. Another straightforward patronymic is found in the case of another Boyd, Mr. John Boyd of Ballaugh, who was a cobbler, fisherman and owner crofter. It's probable that others who were crofters also did some fishing, but John Boyd evidently made more of it. He was known as John Billy Sam. There was a farm servant at Ballaugh called Miss Elizabeth Kinraid, who was known as Bet Nell. I suppose it's possible that her father was perhaps a Neil Kinraid, and that's where the Nell comes from. However, if it's her mother's name, it may mean that Miss Elizabeth Kinraid's mother was unmarried, and that this is a matronymic rather than a patronymic. Anyway, that's beside the point. At the Ballaugh was a weaver and owner crofter called Mr. Daniel Cayley, and Mr. Keig gives his name as Dan na Clay. Whether Clay is just a rushed-over version of Cayley, it's got all but the one letter of that name, it's difficult to say. At the Carlane was a cobbler who went by Tom Farrick Arthur, though official records would have shown him as Mr. Thomas Muchton. Well, this is another of the Reverend Samuel Rutter's drinking songs about Eubonia Sailgagh, shining Eubonia. Eubonia is a Latin form of the Gaelic Owen Ulach, the stronghold of the apple.
Jig and green the rail and knees and saws you down again all side. Ye billy a fina smona through my shoulder, jay and kunter smoo. Molly G. Merrim's vanity and Luden by ledger as a fry. Tax in as Dacarel the goal as soul as bringing on. The bait and stack on that go and you show get lost and sail and nur as get the mush. Becky or such as dash and dish. Molly G. Merrim's vanity and Luden by ledger as a fry. Tax in as Dacarel the goal as soul as bringing on. Oh, here's you go and bless your hood, Crenacti, the strong the hood, but tangle to ye cool and I'll the shin to surely sergeant I'll. Molly G. Merrim's vanity and Lund by ledger as a fry. Dark saying as Dacarel, the goal is surely bringing on. Up mountain green for Bodgel still, desn't a dull and dun and gool. Asian a new job dreading there, she showed the genu each there. Molly G. Merrim's vanity and Lund by ledger as a fry. Dark saying as Dacarel, the goal is surely bringing on. Oh, warrior and a clergy Gael, the heaven nail and neath their nail. Took us a look to nurse Chevine, a shawl, a shash, the guest must way. Molly G. Merrim's vanity and Lund by ledger as a fry. Dark saying as Dacarel, the goal is surely bringing on. Molly G. Merrim's vanity and Lund by ledger
MUCCYN CAGGEE with Annie Kissack setting of the Reverend Samuel Rutter's Eubonia Sailgagh, Shining Eubonia. Another... Oh, the rhythm at Claare BIRLINN JIARG. And I mean, Shiga could the target a sen. The rhythm at Claare ons de cliche hem. Genomen mi Shiga wel shenra reclaschen radio na din. A gantje be shen matei. Another simple form patronymic was Robbie Tom Bob, Mr. Robert Tier of Froude's Croft, of which he was the owner crofter. Mr. William Corlett of Ballotesson, another owner crofter and fisherman, was identified as Billy Johnny Begg. So as we heard before, Johnny Begg would mean Johnny Feast, Johnny the younger, Johnny the son of. So he was Bill, the son of Johnny and grandson of another Johnny. Owner crofter and fisherman Mr. John Collister of BUNSCOILL was called John Juan Rafe. Rafe, perhaps a more unusual name in the family. Some names would have to run to more than the father because there was also another John Juan, but he was John Juan Faddy. Mr. John Cannell, the farmer of Ballacooley. A joiner in Ballaugh village, Mr. William Corlett was known as William Billy, but there was another character called William Billy Woodach, so that brings us back to the Boyds, this time Mr. William Boyd of Ballabolly, where he was the farmer. Ta rydyn elio, yes, mun yn gion ye minstew, als a chelgain to be fame ein oru. Ta banglen a rose fai a choffin a cummelstjache na wadi glaciach abai. Ta bullet kajerik ligget stjachs a choffin, marroway the be a marrow the fear. Ta as benten den chip in the chruj, ta fisain hanna en shijay. Nan kion gyarit vai vis court fay. Tashin wagen leschen sulien heen. Ma so tre tashin fedden all dun je shoulder rau. Fodmuj kummel sa choffin egge a stroye, ma vishin bayerach de sen as de fisain Ach, te achtel. Tamir vraiach je machara Arminius je aluscoil Budapest, de yinu recortus je. As, why ullion a sesen ton, de ginstau je na ter erbe. Genode away the jarra wach de rawi a voivod Dracula shen, as chosen a goo 9 Turkach. Chawelje en ouwin voer eer kaglich talu en Turkach. Shodden en poddenkioli skiel, shenine mish as Helen.
Van en vintans minne non gitelen je sieren treden on corridors na preden side corra de characnen medan son failjon be much go on the yiggins and weapons given here's a camera journey ja kolos na chol von herren here a gavina show you the min and tide a hit van ein stjaks of a jan the yiggen the man is the pagan and madigan I tie the highest chicks on your cry, hello, it together. Destruction, solution, and gone the stations on the villain. Yorkshire and shin, a garvig as a hook vara. Toyak and a be an egas ya. Fagman and manic and chicken. Pigmas just rest to listen along as begin sign on stike again. On stike again, but a job that you're less bad, you're as the yaga. As the abbey by the goal, alive to this mutilation and shiver. Be pitch it tie for Gusnayak might and snai, I need to go cover. Of the men hosted and gorge him. Great a good time post of a ons Mina kitten on chi till ennis tjeren Zitten on for it is the bread and cycle round the harknan medan Some trillion image go on the you can sun weapons skillen Yes you can relish journey ya golnusran Oban and Levington's Mina kitten on chi till ennis tjeren Zitten on for it is the bread and cycle round the harknan medan
Well, má bí fisio ará sin sé níag Mrs. Ellen ba sin scíal Gael manin bheith bhín a réin tradiisiúnach banin. As gamal is son sin ha mi a chór an a réin sin ons an ódréil neau cheat an grai seo gamal is son sin. Ma bhí sin an acht, eis gené dunne cajin bháin. Son sa ling ag a hín, as rischieden de blinten na lug, was sly chit mar an fer sachtel a scrouty, chamas an fer stunnel, je mecca tollu chauhol jane ghael. Ren na inchen jartel, as an eigne ma jaren, egge gol merish jachs an eiege, as het earnish, chit na nai ein. Now, Tom Jack was Mr. Thomas Quayle, a joiner and owner crofter in the village of Ballaugh, where, too, you could find Mrs. James Lace. Well, that in itself is an old-fashioned way where married women were identified with their husbands. Mrs. James Lace of the village, no occupation given, but she was known as Lizzie John Bill. An owner crofter and blacksmith of the Cronk, Mr. Thomas Tier, was Tom Dewan Bob. But to close, the owner crofter and butcher of Cape Horn was Mr. William Cain, and he was known as Billy Cain Flute. Chris Pearson is up next, bringing you your Sunday chill out from 7 till 9. And at 9, Judith Lay will be here with Sundown. We close Claare Gael with Clash Vuur and the traditional song Ta Cashin ar Shulgus an Erga. Cashin is away to the ocean. Ach, Sineanish is my soul till the next time then. This is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Old Bobby Bob.
Wishing you a very good night. Eve I McCreary, will you, as Orselier, as my Yeri and shed you.